Good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to you all for the first of our 2020 Successful Ageing Seminars. And what a seminar it's going to be. I'm really looking forward to it very much myself. I'm Ruth Grant, and I have the pleasure and privilege of chairing these sessions for the university. It wouldn't be possible to chair them without the aid of some really special people, and we have some new members of the team, and I just wanted to introduce you to them so that you realise that I seem to do everything effortlessly, perhaps, but it's all because of the work behind the scenes. Zoe, thank you, Zoe. Jade. Sarah is outside, and Michelle told me she wouldn't be here either. Is that correct? Oh, well, two absolutely key people are here, and I do thank you most sincerely for all that you do. It's fantastic. If you have a hearing loss, there are hearing devices, which were on the table outside, the loops, the ear pads, but also if you have a hearing device, do set it to the T setting on your hearing device. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we recognise and respect their cultural heritage, their beliefs and their relationship with the land. And we also acknowledge past leaders of the Kaurna people, present and those emerging. If you have a mobile phone, do turn it to silent, if you will, or turn it off. And masks, well, I can see that you're all masked, which is wonderful. QR codes, if you forgot to do your QR code when you came in, do during the afternoon tea, if you would be so good to do that. Masks present a certain different approach to afternoon tea as well. So I will talk a little bit about that now. When you do go down to afternoon tea, obviously you will need to enjoy afternoon tea without your mask, but the staff will serve you the tea and coffee, and there will be milk and sugar available and biscuits in individually wrapped packs. So there we are, one of the more important aspects of the afternoon I've dealt with, so that's grand. We do very much enjoy your feedback. We do try, where possible, to act on the feedback. So there are feedback forms. If you didn't pick up a feedback form and you came in, on the table outside, there are feedback forms there. This presentation will be recorded, and during the interval between the first two speakers, we'll give you the contact address to view the presentations, and others that have been given in the past present really quite a wealth of canvas of the types of research that are being carried out within the University of South Australia. Now, if I just move on now to our speakers for this wonderful session on nature, citizen science and healthy ageing. We're going to hear from two really great speakers, Professor Craig Williams, and also later on after afternoon tea, Larissa Braz-Souza. With regard to Professor Craig Williams, I think it's fair to say that it is rare to have someone who has such a wonderful seamless amalgam of educator, communicator and researcher in that interface between the environment and public health. He's a Dean of Programs in the Academic Unit of the University of South Australia Clinical and Health Sciences Unit. He initiated the Mozzie Monitors, which is a citizen science surveillance program. We're going to hear about that from Larissa after afternoon tea. But he's collaborated with SA Health and the Office for Ageing Well in relation to the health benefits of connecting with nature. Maybe we'll hear something about that today. He was recognised as a South Australian Young Scientist of the Year in 2007, and of course, most fascinatingly, he won the Ig Nobel Prize in Biology. Now, I know that some of you won't know about the Ig Nobel Prizes, so I did a little homework, and I hope you'll enjoy this. The Ig Nobel Prizes were really a parody, if you like, on the Nobel Prizes, but they're serious research prizes. They're awarded each year at the same time as the Nobel Prizes, and only 10 of them are awarded worldwide. They're awarded for real research achievements, but ones that make you smile or laugh and then make you think. The prizes are intended to celebrate the unusual, honour the imaginative, and spur people's interest in science, medicine, and technology. Craig and his team were awarded this Ig Nobel Prize in Biology in 2005, and this is what they did. They painstakingly smelt and catalogued the peculiar odours produced by 131 different species of frogs when they were stressed. Now, I can only imagine what challenge that would be to the olfactory system. But seriously, though, frogs are very important measures of the health of an environment. So there's the think part. But I do I hope your olfactory system has recovered, Craig. Anyway, please join me in warmly welcome Craig to speak to us. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you so much. How's my volume? All right, thank you so much. I have to say that was one of the loveliest introductions I think I've ever had, and I feel a bit of a connection to your host, to Ruth Grant, through the part of the university I belong to and I'm privileged enough to work in, was the part of the university broadly where Ruth had plied her trade and exhibited such strong leadership in health science, in academia and health science. So I'm very, very fortunate. So it was funny you mentioned the Ig Nobel Prizes. I think I will actually get to touch on them a little bit in this talk, but it took me back to, there were two things that struck me when you mentioned them. First of all was the year, 2005, I think. So that's a little while ago. And you sort of think of yourself as, I'm one of the younger academics around, and then, but then you quickly realise that you're not. How did that happen? When did 17 years get in the rearview mirror? And I started at UniSA as an academic in 2006, so around that time, and then the following year was very fortunate to be honoured with an award as a Young Scientist of the Year. I guess I'm not in that category now, and part of my role is, I guess, ensuring that UniSA has the staff to keep delivering great teaching in clinical and health sciences and research. And so I find myself interviewing and appointing new staff who, they're like 28 and 30 and things like that. So yeah, look, the years are going by. So it is a great time to give this seminar. In fact, it's the ideal time for me. And when I was asked if I might be available, I was thrilled to accept. I'm going to begin it. Larissa, the most wonderful PhD student, just submitted her thesis, is going to finish it after the break. But I'm going to try and bring together a few threads here. This idea of nature, citizen science as a mechanism to bring people into nature and exposed to it. And then how that intersects with healthy ageing. And as Ruth mentioned, we have recently been working with the Office for Ageing Well, that branch of Wellbeing SA, and doing some research that helps them achieve some of their policy goals. And hopefully, the broader aim is to make sure that all citizens certainly in our state and our country, if they don't live longer, at least the years they live are the best years you can have. Live the best years for as long as you can. And so anything I can do from a research perspective, a policy perspective, an advocacy perspective for that is something worth doing. But I often wonder how I got to be even talking about healthy ageing. How does that even happen? And so in preparing this talk, I had to reflect on my own history. And you think, I'm going to talk about nature and citizen science and healthy ageing. And think, well, what does my life say about that? So there's me. I'm wearing the really nice lion knitted jumper. My mother would have knitted that. She also cut my hair, so, she doesn't cut it anymore. I ended that little fraudulent bit of activity when I was 12. But there's me then with my little brother, my younger brother, and in the great tradition of younger brothers, he's got an enormous bruise, contusion, swelling on his forehead, probably from doing something that younger brothers do. And I'm glad he's not here right now, because younger brothers, what can you do? Anyway, so we grew up in, we had nothing special about nature, wildlife. We grew up in Hackham. People know where Hackham is, the southern suburbs of Adelaide. And at that time, so this was around 1977, this picture would have been taken roughly. And in fact, I can just see in the background little hints that the suburb is still being developed. So that was the outer edge of the Adelaide metro area roughly at that time. And, our childhood was nothing special. It was, we're into wildlife. I mean, my father is an electrician. My mum, she worked in a bank when she went back to work. There was nothing about nature or wildlife, but geez, we're outside a lot. And as my dermatologist now tells me, when I see her, I'm just going to take a wild stab that a few of you have seen dermatologists as well. And they said, geez, you've seen a lot of sun. And we did. Despite my mother's best attempts at putting sunscreen on us, we're outside like all the time, which is probably why my brother's head looks like that. He looks so innocent there. Oh my God. But then, this is my own son. This is a few years old now. He's much taller. He's taller than me now. But I've tried to, I guess, instill in him that same love of being outside, love of being at least connected to nature in some way. I've involved him in field work, and he does a lot of sports, so he's outside a lot. He's here actually with a UniSA staff member, one of our technical staff. They're setting up an insect trap for a second year class that we were teaching. But I've always tried to instill that in my own son and try to hope that he ages with nature. And so eventually, though, I went from being like just some regular kid in some regular suburb to being the first in my family to go to university, which I'm not sure how I scraped in really, because I wanted to be an engineer and I didn't get the marks. I don't know what happened at school. But anyway, I got into science at just next door at Adelaide University, and I fell in love with zoology. There was like courses called zoology, and you could go and then we'd go into these lectures there. It's not that dissimilar from this one. And then some sort of wild-haired kind of sort of crusty-looking, and they're all men, all white men, principally. Thankfully, our academic staffing profile's changed a bit since then. But they would just tell these great tales of, animals they'd studied and things they'd done. And I loved it. And I realised, that's what I want to do. I wonder if I can do that for a living. Turns out you can. So I went to university for a while and just hung around. And eventually I became a lecturer in biology. And here's me actually, this is when I won this is me when I won the prize. When I won I was the Young Scientist of the Year, and looking bemused because I honestly didn't know that was going to happen that day. So through my career, I began to realise that not only could I get a great job, like teaching people, but then the university expected me to do research. I thought, cool, I love like wildlife, but I was in like what was then the School of Pharmacy and Medical Sciences. There's a trick. So how am I going to do my wildlife stuff in there? And I thought, I wonder if I could just study wildlife and natural systems and somehow kind of weave that together with human health. Anyway, about 15, 16 years down the line, I might almost be there. So, but along the way, we all have to have mentors. And so I did a postdoctoral post in North Queensland. It was my professor there at the time. And he was a great mentor because he was another one of these guys who loved nature, loved wildlife, and loved research. And so what a privilege to get paid to do science, to teach, and to do research. And we love the outdoors. And he showed me the benefits of drinking wine and how that was actually part of nature, because he was all about the terroir of the landscape and how it influences the grapes. And thanks, guy. Anyway, he'd drink me under the table. But way back before that, the mentor thing I always took very seriously. So this guy with the white hair, for me, he was kind of the epitome of what I wanted to be. Not like 6'3" with a beard, but because I'm like 5'9", I'm not going to get there now. But for about 30 years, I was a head of school of biology in American universities, in Texas and Utah and so forth. And for his career, he studied He studied amphibians, he studied wildlife, and he taught, and he was in academia. I thought, what a great life. And he was outside all the time and doing research, and I just thought, that's a pretty successful way to age. I reckon I'd like me to get some of that. So here's me with him a few years ago, and in fact, he's off to go fishing in Argentina very shortly. He worked till like he was about 72 or 3. I thought that was pretty good. So I had a great exposure to mentors that showed me the beauty of, I guess, being cognizant of what you do for your living. And so with that, what did I do for my living? So apart from teaching biology and all of that, I did research, and I still do. And my research career is kind of divided into probably 3 big phases. The first was something that Ruth touched on in the intro, and that's the study of frogs, and particularly frog skin. So frogs, it turns out, they're really soft, right? They don't have armour, so they produce chemicals as their armour. So we studied that a lot. And, you want to know how we stress them to get the odours. Yeah, I mean, sometimes just picking them up will stress them out. We used to, and this was extremely ethical, trust me. This is called a student's stimulator. You give them a very mild electric shock, and then the chemicals from the skin come out, and you can... Anyway, we used to study them. Anyway, I made a research career out of studying frogs, herpetology. And then the next phase of my career really was when I began to think, geez, how am I going to weave wildlife and biology with human health? So that's when I started working in what we call medical entomology, the study of disease-carrying insects. And so mosquitoes became probably the biggest part of my research career. And mosquitoes, well, everyone has had exposure to them. The females of some species take blood, they transmit diseases. That's a bit of a problem. And some of you may have heard of a recent outbreak of Japanese encephalitis throughout eastern and southern Australia. That's of great concern. So that's been a big focus of my research career for a long time. And actually that fit quite neatly into the health kind of paradigm that I was employed in. So that's my thing. And indeed, Larissa will talk a lot about mozzies when she's talking. But moreover, it was that love of natural systems, and it really struck me that, if the systems are healthy, if the natural systems are healthy, this is the part of the Southern Flinders Ranges, just a place where we're collecting frogs. It just looks awesome and reminds me to tell you that if environments are healthy, then people tend to be healthy. Healthy environments, healthy people. That's the general kind of mantra. But then we've got a problem. We have a problem. Australia is it may be the world's or one of the world's most urbanised countries. More than 80% of us live in cities. And this is a pretty good city. Adelaide's a great city. And here's just a little bit of Adelaide, the CBD you would recognise. Some of the fringing older suburbs, grid-like, and our parklands set out in quite a visionary manner. But we do have a problem in that living in a city can be bad for your health in some ways. And you can imagine why. I mean, you think of air quality, you think of your use of time, the noises you're exposed to, the artificial light, the crowds. Those things can be bad for health. Thankfully, there's hope. So if we even look at Adelaide, we've got these fringing parklands here. And if you look more deeply, you can see sort of recreational areas, and along these old streets especially, rows and rows of trees. And those natural elements are going to be, they're vital now in cities, and they're going to be more and more vital going forwards, because they provide what are called ecosystem services. So we think of I suppose I'd like you to think of ecosystems not necessarily as those beautiful pristine places you go on holiday to. I mean, they are ecosystems. There's tropical ones, marine ones. And we hear a lot of bad tales about ecosystems, right? Like Great Barrier Reef's in trouble, deforestation, it's bad. It is. But we can create ecosystems in cities that provide ecosystem services. What are those ecosystem services? Well, I'm glad you asked. There's a whole bunch here, and I know you can read, so I won't read the list, but just to reflect on some of the major things that ecosystems do for us, that these parklands are doing for us right now. Gas regulation, taking up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, churning out oxygen. Regulating the climate, modulating temperature, keeping it cooler. regulating water flow. Without vegetation, the water, when it hits the rain, it just runs straight into the sea. So that slows water up, and we can use that in water supply, controlling erosion, nutrient cycling, waste treatment. All of these things, very important ecosystem services. Pollination. So you need pollination to make food. So ecosystem services to make flowering plants produce fruits and vegetables, or produce fruits, you need pollination. So there's a whole bunch of, I guess, services that these ecosystems supply to us. In also the recreational and cultural value of those ecosystems. So it's not just pollinators and oxygen, we love both of those things, but it's the recreational and cultural value. I mean, particularly the parklands, for those of you who maybe live near the city or enjoy using the parklands, it's very important spaces. But a lot of people have a space they like, they go to, that's important to them. And then you hear, oh, there's a development that's going to happen and that's going to be taken away, or they're going to build something on that. And it cuts you very deeply. There's actually a word for that. You know when there's like a special place and might be, it doesn't matter whether it's a built place or a natural place, and then it gets removed, it gets destroyed. You know, if you're in the Ukraine, it could be by warfare, but it could be by development or construction. It's called solastalgia. Solastalgia. There's this word where people lament and feel like an angst and a sadness when things disappear. This is a real thing. That term's actually only been around about 10 or 12 years. So ecosystem services help preserve that stuff. They're good. So we know they provide services to us, but are there other things that are good about being exposed to natural environments? I mean, who doesn't love a walk in the park or a walk in a forest? I mean, because it's just nice, isn't it? Let's go for a walk somewhere. Let's go for a walk in the hills, or let's go for a walk through the parklands. It feels good. It feels right. I mean, you can go for a walk along the street. That's okay. I mean, if you like that urban kind of vibe, that's nice. But it just feels right, feels good. So why? What's happening there? Can we dig underneath that and understand what is it about exposure to natural environments that is good for us? It might be being in the environment and being exposed to it, or it might just be seeing it, or even just knowing it's there. So there's getting back to the solastalgia concept, there's a whole bunch of research now around, how people's mental health is altered when they hear about the destruction of the natural environment or the loss of a species. It might be something you've never seen in your life, but you know it's there. And then you find out it's not there. And it's like, some people say, oh, whatever. But a lot of people feel sad. And like, it's hard to pin, why do I feel so sad about that? So anyway, let's run through a little bit of a laundry list here of why natural environments are good for us. Well, first of all, air quality. You're breathing in better air. You tend to. Plants, generally, vegetation soaks up dust, particulate matter. It'll soak up, and the dust in urban areas is full of heavy metals and all sorts of things, volatile organic compounds. These things are soaked up by vegetation. So air quality is better. Food security, so that gets down to having pollinators, being able to actually grow stuff in your garden because there are natural environments nearby. Biodiversity is great. That's a measure of the different species we have and how broad that kind of catalogue of wildlife is. It might be little butterflies or little critters or ants, whatever. The more you have, just the better it is. Better food webs, you use less pesticide in your garden when you've got more predatory wasps and so forth. Social interactions between people. You often go to these places with other people, and that's good for you. Being socially interacting with other people is a good thing. It's healthy for you. I know the SA Health, the Office for Ageing Well, are very concerned about loneliness. That's the big thing for them. Loneliness is bad. It's really unhealthy for you. You increase your physical activity in these places. The exercise is good. It's actually better for your immune function. Now, this is a pretty imprecise science, but it can decrease the level of a chemical in your body called cortisol, and cortisol, that's kind of that flight or fight kind of chemical response in your body. That actually normally dampens your immune system down. So if you go into natural environments, those cortisol levels can come down, your appetite comes down, and your immune system can elevate in broad terms. It's good for your mental health. We touched on that before. So there actually are a few broader theories about how this all works. And some of those I've dug into a little bit just going through that list. But environment and human health, there's probably three major theories about why it's good for you. Firstly, there's a theory called attention restoration theory. The basic idea is that when you're in artificial environments, your whole sensory system is just kind of switched on. You're just up and just jiving the whole time. You're just on high alert, and this is bad for you. So what happens is these high levels of directed attention, it might just be in that artificial environment, might be the screen, might be the phone, might be the lights, might be the traffic noise, might be everything. That actually it in a sense wears out certain pathways in your cognition system. And so natural environments do what's called soft fascination. So then you're in a natural environment and then you're paying attention to that. You're not sort of going, oh wow, I'm going to search for the veins on the leaves and I'm going to, you're just kind of just enjoying it. You're just chilling. Soft fascination, that's called. So this can help restore some of those pathways. This is what neuroscientists talk about. Stress reduction theory, that's a theory I like the sound of. So natural environments can trigger stress reduction mechanisms. These can be both physiological, so to do with actual chemical and endocrine and neurological function in the body, and they can be psychological as well. So they kind of, if you like, it's not separate from it, sort of articulates with this attention restoration theory. And the other one is a bit of a different theory, the old friends hypothesis. So if we cast our minds back to the evolution of Homo sapiens, so humans, more or less like us, maybe not as good at dresses, 250,000 years ago, were distinct from other apes, getting around, progressing from, wooded areas and moving around the globe by about 70,000 years, moving out of Africa. And so when we did that, early Homo sapiens, we were exposed to a whole bunch of bacteria in the environment. A whole suite of different microbes and bacteria out there that were on us, that were in the food we ate, at the camps we made, the environments we were in. I mean, we weren't going to wash our hands before every meal. I mean, that's just not what happened. So our immune systems evolved in that context of these really diverse microbial kind of environment. They're the so-called old friends. And if you go into natural environments, you're going one step towards exposing your body to the bacterial kind of flora environment that humans evolved in. So that's thought to be good for you, and it's good for your immune function. They say it's good for kids to eat dirt. That's the, I don't know. My son never ate dirt, but maybe he should have. That's the kind of theory. So the old friends hypothesis. Your immune function benefits from exposure to natural microbes. So most of you probably know, our skin is covered in bacteria. There's bacteria in our mouths and basically, not in your lungs, hopefully, or in your bladder or urinary system or anything. Your gut is full of bacteria. And the composition of the bacteria is actually very, very important for your health. Just going into natural environments can change the bacteria that live in your nose and on your skin. Now, we don't fully understand exactly what changes you need to have better, body function, but we know it's better for you. There's also links between your microbial composition, what's in your gut, and mental health and cognition. So there are links with dementia as well, and dementia, avoiding dementia with gut health. And of course, we do so much to our bodies that changes those bacteria. Every time you take an antibiotic, and sometimes we have to, that alters that. So exposure to natural environments is good for exposing yourself to bacteria. So all of these three theories, probably true for the most part. There's a lot of research going on around that. We recently published a review of these benefits in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. And what we were proposing there is that actually we reckon you could use citizen science to bring people into natural environments in urban areas to improve their health. So why are urban areas bad for your health? Well, just briefly, and I've mentioned some of these before, air pollution can cause asthma, allergies, cardiovascular disease, altered microbial exposure. I've mentioned that before. That's linked with multiple sclerosis, cancer, asthma, irritable bowel disease. God, it sounds really bad, doesn't it? Living in cities. Decreased exposure to sunlight can be a problem. Adelaide's not too bad. Noise pollution, light pollution, and also the very makeup of some cities is quite, we have high levels of human density and often very transient human populations, which can bring other kinds of risks. So, SA Health, Wellbeing SA, through the Office for Ageing Well, did engage us over the last few years to do some activities and some research to try and investigate this idea that if we bring older South Australians into contact with nature, we can improve their health and well-being. And you might think, what's an older South Australian? Well, for them, I think it's over 50. That's a pretty big group. So I'm nearly there. Next year, I'm going to sign myself up. I'll get the newsletter, but it's a broad group. And what I have loved about working with the Office for Ageing Well, and it's been an education for me. You go to the first meeting, and I think someone, I'm not claiming it was me, used the word elderly, and just went, "You can't say that." And now every time I hear the word elderly on the radio, I think, "Oh, you can't say that." No, it's older. Older. Yeah, it's not elderly. No, elderly, it's a negative term. So that's what it's been, I mean, I was never ageist, I'm fairly confident, but this is, it's been really great to work with the Office for Ageing Well and try and understand what I actually want to achieve. And I really love what they're about. So they've got their plan for Ageing Well, 2020 to 2025, and there's lots of things embedded within that around connectivity, reducing loneliness, activities, services. Some of that speaks to the aged care environment, but a lot of it doesn't. So anyway, there's lots of stuff. Our work has been mostly in what they call the meaningful connection space, where we're bringing people together. So our big thing is bringing the research we've done, older South Australians in groups together into nature, and we've been using citizen science to do that. Citizen science could bring together natural environments and people in a social setting. That's what I told the Office for Ageing Well, and they went, okay, that sounds good. So we ran, 2018, we started running a series of activities for older South Australians. So you had to be over 50 to get in, and we would take them into a citizen science experience. We had a few different ones. There was frog spotting and wildlife spotting. The main thing we did was, and this was very important, we got them to use their mobile phones, and we got them to actually take photographs of nature. We'd go on orchestrated nature walks in the city. Adelaide is great. It is full of urban green spaces. It's really cool. And we would take them, and then they would use a mobile phone app on their phone called the iNaturalist app, and they would take photographs of nature, and then the app would tell them what it was, and they would be in groups, and we'd have a cup of tea afterwards. Pretty cool. So we did that. And this was just, and this is the kind of thing that would happen. These she's looking at a critic. This lady actually, the great thing is it would bring these people who had all this expertise. She was a retired entomologist, it turns out. She knew more about insects than I ever knew. So we ran these series of activities, and we wrote some reviews, and we looked into it. And then, and that was called Activating Citizen Scientists. And so we would run these excursions. So this one was in Mount Gambier, and by using electronic devices, it kind of also satisfied some of SA Health's desires. They wanted to make sure older South Australians were fully cognizant of electronic access. And it was quite funny because I remember it was in the Aldinga Scrub one day, and there was this lady I was with, she'd be 75 or so, and she's motoring around, and we're just chatting and looking at wildlife. And she said, yeah, I've been helping my friend, access his MyGov account on his mobile phone, on the app. I said, oh, cool, how old's your friend? Oh, he's 50. So, this whole idea that younger people are better at phones than older people, yeah, I'm not sure I quite agree with that. That's not always true. That's not a universal truth. But here was me boring this poor lady with some images we'd taken. Anyway, so it was we did a bunch of activities, and after we did this work, the Office for Ageing Well said, well, what should we do next? Well, what do you need to do? And I said, what we need to do, we need to measure the health of these people before and after, right? Let's do a trial. So we did that. Oops. Oh, gosh, that was exciting. Now, hold on. Here we go. So, so anyway, look, tons of fun, and it was myself, Larissa was involved, she was one of the team. It was a team of people. Good mate of mine, I went through university with Stephen, he was there. Anyway, lots of lovely photos and experiences, really cool. So then we did a trial. We thought, we're really going to nail this one. And it was another lesson in science for me. I keep learning lessons in science and how to fail at science. So we did two trials. One was a retrospective trial where we essentially recruited people and we brought them in for interviews. And we asked them a bunch of questions. And the first question we asked them was, do you do citizen science? And for the record, citizen science is scientific data collection by non-professionals, basically. So someone volunteers, said, I'd be happy to go and count birds and report that in, or I'd be happy to count kangaroos and do that. That's citizen science. And for us, it's trapping mosquitoes and sending that information in. So that's broadly what it is. So we said, okay, were you involved in citizen science or not? And they said yes or no. And then we'd measure a whole bunch of other stuff, what medication they took, what exercise they did. We did a bunch of other measures on them around loneliness, social connection. And what we found was, it was pretty good actually, it was pretty neat. We found if you were involved in citizen science, you had lower loneliness. It's pretty nice. And you were more physically active, you tended to be. But we needed to do more. So that was the beginning. It was the effect size wasn't massive, but it was there. So we said, right, now we're going to do a clinical trial. We're going to recruit people, we're going to bring them to our clinical trial facility, and we're going to get people who don't do citizen science. We're going to bring them in, we're going to run these tests, we're going to make them wear an exercise meter on their wrist, we're going to collect all the information about their medication and their friendships and all of that. And I tell you, you get some great information from people about some of the stuff made my hair curl, but people's friendships. It's like, whew, okay. But all of our data is de-identified, so that's fine. And that's all locked away. So we had these people, and then we measured their physical activity and all this sort of stuff. And we sent them on an 8-week citizen science kind of nature experience. Not for all 8 weeks, but every Saturday. For a couple of hours on a Saturday, they'd go and do this stuff. And what we found was 8 weeks isn't long enough. We didn't really get a nice change in behaviour or these measures. There's a few reasons for that, we think, but one of the main things is the dose wasn't big enough. The dose of nature, the dose of citizen science wasn't big enough. So actually, I've got to meet the Office for Ageing Well tomorrow, and they don't seem bothered by this result. I mean, that's science for you. You ask a question and you design your experiment, and sometimes you get a really great answer. For us, we need to think about how we're measuring well-being, and we need to think about how long people need to be doing this stuff to really achieve a health benefit. So that's what we're working on. Whoops. Wow, that's a hair trigger. So then, sort of to bring my bit to a close, and how's my time there? Am I just about right? Excellent. So one of the citizen science things we've been doing, and Ruth very kindly introduced that before, Mozzie monitors, where we've had people, because Mozzies was my thing, we've had people collecting mosquitoes, taking photos of mosquitoes to try and improve not only our knowledge of mosquitoes and disease risk, but also to increase the knowledge in people generally about public health and mosquitoes. And so Mozzie Month has been a big thing we've been doing very recently, but I'm not going to steal Larissa's thunder. She's going to unpack that for you in great depth. So I guess I'm going to conclude there, and in doing so, just thank my fantastic PhD student Larissa. She first came to Australia in 2015 as a visiting student from São Paulo in Brazil. She came back to do a PhD. She got a scholarship from the university, and I'm not going to steal any more thunder, but anyway, she's been great. She's been amazing. She's really led a lot of this citizen science stuff. Good mate of mine, Stephen Fricker. The SA Office for Ageing Well have funded quite a bit of our research, and I'm grateful to the university for employing me. And I might leave it there for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Craig. Don't leave, just stay, if you will, because I'm sure there'll be some questions. We have quite good amount of time for questions before afternoon tea, so we'll have a roving mic, I think, just in the interests of COVID. And so I'll just look for some raised hands. Here's one, that's easy. Just one moment and we'll get the mic to you.
Thank you. You said that you could get mozzie repellent from the skin of frogs.
Yes.
Yes. Does the same apply to the skin of cane toads?
I actually tested that in the 1990s. I think I looked at that because cane toad skin, as you probably know, is quite toxic, and if pets eat it and wildlife, it can kill them. But they don't really produce like an odorous secretion. So their secretion has no odour, the cane toad, but it's quite toxic. So what we've found is that amphibians that produce very, very toxic chemicals in their skin, such as the cane toad, or people may have heard of newts in North America, and if you eat them, like you just drop dead. You could kill an elephant, not that many elephants are eating newts, but they don't tend to smell. So some frogs make like a smell for their defence, and others do the hard chemical, and it's only the smelly ones that tend to repel mosquitoes. But yes, that would have been a great use for cane toads, right? Yeah.
One over here, Jade, just there.
Thank you. Now, I'm sure you didn't tell the whole story with your retrospective study, because how could you possibly cancel the possibility that the people in the study were already socially better off and exercised more?
100%, and it's a great point, and you're right. So there are inherent biases with the work that I think was one of the principal reasons why we weren't able to show a better effect. So when we recruit people to these studies, the sorts of people that tend to respond and are interested in participating are those that tend to be, I guess, a little more socially mobile. They may have a little more personal wealth or personal higher education levels, and that generally tends to track better with exercise, health and wellbeing. And so the great challenge for us, and it's still a challenge, is how do we conduct studies with people that are maybe less healthy and less educated, and perhaps for whom English is not their first original language as well. Big challenges, and you're 100% right with that comment. Absolutely, yeah.
Another question? Craig, may I ask you, this may be something you'd prefer to leave until after Larissa's presentation, but I think we'd all be very interested in this whole business of Japanese encephalitis.
Sure.
Would that be better to await Larissa's presentation, or?
Happy for me. You're not really touching JE, are you? A little tiny bit. So, yeah. Look, thank you, Ruth. I can just colour it in very briefly.
Lovely. Okay, thanks.
So, because it actually was the mosquito. There's more than 300 different mosquitoes types in Australia, and the particular one that's transmitting Japanese encephalitis recently is the one I did my PhD studies on. So Japanese encephalitis is not normally a disease in Australia. A virus infects the central nervous system, brain and spinal cord, transmitted by a certain group of mosquitoes. It's normally a problem in South and Southeast Asia. It's a disease of wildlife. It's a zoonosis. So the virus normally resides in other animals, principally birds, mostly water birds. Detected on the Australian mainland once previously in 1999, and not since. And there was a lot of worry 20 odd years ago. Oh my God, Japanese encephalitis is coming. This is really bad. This will kill people. This is very debilitating. And it just never arrived. And then this year, like November 2021, there was someone died in the Tiwi Islands. And then all of a sudden, it was detected throughout southern and eastern Australia, not in human cases. There were people in hospital on life support with neurological disease. It was detected by piggery vets. So stillborn piglets, mummified piglets. There was a reproductive disease in pigs, and people were going, that's weird. And so they did the testing and went, oh, that's Japanese encephalitis. So that virus really does very well in pigs. So I guess big concern at the moment, public health concern. I do know there were detections of virus as late as March circulating near piggeries in Victoria. I've had some in South Australia. The risk right now for us is probably declining every day, which is good, but big questions remain about what might happen in the coming spring and summer. I think we've had two very wet summers cycles, La Nina cycles, and that above average rainfall has probably enabled water birds carrying the virus to come from Papua down through inland Australia and then seed local ecosystems. So, yeah, really, no one expected it. The Commonwealth was completely underprepared and had no idea it was coming. So we've had a major failing of our surveillance systems, and I guess that's, I won't steal Larissa's thunder, but this whole idea of citizens can actually bolster our surveillance systems, and geez, our surveillance systems need some bolstering. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Another question? Right. Good. That was a wonderfully comprehensive answer to my question. Thank you very much.
I wasn't sure. I mean,
that was great.
That's part one of the Japanese encephalitis lecture.
Sorry, I remembered I had another question. Japanese forest bathing, have you looked at that? Because it seems to be very similar to what you're looking at.
Sorry, Japanese forest...
Forest bathing.
Oh, yes. Sorry, for some reason I thought you were talking about a virus. No. Yeah, the forest bathing. Yes. So I haven't studied that in particular, but this idea of forest bathing or nature, prescribed nature, and nature as a therapy, where people are actually could be technically prescribed, oh, you need a good course of sitting in the woods, or you need to, seriously, I don't mean to trivialise it or sound trite. I think it's potentially a very important health initiative. I know there are some folks, some colleagues of mine in Tasmania who are looking, I think, to write a grant, develop a project with some psychiatrists around this idea of immersion in green spaces, forest bathing, that kind of thing, to improve people's mental health. So yes, I'm aware of it. I haven't personally got involved in that, but I think it's a really rich area of investigation. So, yeah, nature as a therapy, big time.
Any other questions? Right, I know that Craig would be more than happy just to have you chat with him individually if you haven't had a chance to ask a question or perhaps didn't feel that you would like to do so. We now have the break for afternoon tea. If you could just take yourselves out the front door and we'll call you back in about 15 minutes. Thanks very much indeed. Bye-bye. Welcome back. Well, I'm really looking forward to this presentation by our recently submitted doctoral thesis speaker, Larissa Braz-Souza. It must be a great delight to have submitted your thesis, Larissa, and now the waiting, and let's hope the examiners move swiftly in examining it. It's lovely that we're not going to lose you by the sounds of things back to Brazil too soon anyway, because you're going to be working here a little bit longer, we hope, so that's great. Larissa comes from Brazil, as Craig mentioned earlier on. She did a master's degree in the Sao Paulo State University, and it was in zoology and epidemiology. And she's a biologist, and she was a former science teacher. They're such rare and important people, these science teachers. I wonder if you'll go back to that sometime, who knows. But her research is looking at the implementation of citizen science surveillance monitoring, mosquito surveillance programs. And I think this is going to be really quite fascinating and very topical, because we're all even more aware of what mosquitoes can do and that we need to know much more about them because of the Japanese encephalitis activity going on at the moment. So Larissa, warm welcome. Looking forward very much to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, thank you very much for introduction. Before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land where we are meeting today, and to pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. As Ruth said, I am from Brazil, and I'm a biologist, and I'm a science teacher, and I've done my master's degree with the distribution of dengue fever in Brazil. And my story with the UniSA started like 7 years ago when I was doing my master's, and I got a scholarship to do a part of my research overseas. And I was very lucky because I emailed Professor Craig Williams by the time after reading one of his papers about dengue fever in Australia. And he accepted to be my supervisor for this short period for only 5 months. And I came to Adelaide in 2015 and late 2015 and early 2016. But I had a great opportunity here. I could learn a lot about mosquitoes, mosquito surveillance, distribution of diseases, mosquito-borne diseases. And it was a great experience in his lab. And of course, I loved living in Adelaide. And so I finished my master's in Brazil. I started teaching in a primary school. And back in 2018, I applied for an ATN scholarship, which was designed for Latin American students. And I was lucky enough to come back to Adelaide and to start my PhD with mosquito surveillance and citizen science. So that's a little bit about my story for the past years. And as I said, I was involved with mosquitoes since my master's, so I was already fascinated about mosquitoes and public health. But today I'm going to tell you a little bit why I got so fascinated about citizen science as well. So there are many definitions for citizen science, but the definition that we like and we use is that citizen science is the public participation into scientific research aiming to increase scientific knowledge. So in other words, it's about bringing the community together to actively participate, to generate scientific knowledge about different species or different fields. And it's when researchers and communities work together to answer a question or to solve a problem. There are many programs and many ways to get involved, but one of the most common citizen science engagements is about monitoring species. And as we can see, for this kind of engagement, everyone can get involved, even, small kids. They can participate by recording species, taking photos, making observations, recording sounds, and counting species. And when we look back at the history of citizen science, we can see that 200 years ago, people started participating by making observations of birds in the UK and in the US. And for a few decades, they were doing that for a hobby, while they could enjoy nature outside, spending time with their family and friends, and also helping researchers and helping institutions. And a few decades later, researchers could find that these birds that they were analyzing, they were counting, they were returning from their migration a few months earlier, every year, as the months were getting warmer, every year. And it could be possibly related to climate change. And this program was very successful in 2 different continents, so it spread to many different countries. And today, the bird count, or the bird watch, is the most widespread citizen science program in the world. And another example of a very successful citizen science program is the monarch butterfly watch that started 65 years ago in North America. So by that time, the butterflies would just disappear from the northern states in the US and from the southern Canada, but researchers didn't know where they were going. And so, in the 1950s, a Canadian zoologist and his wife, they recruited hundreds of people in North America, people from different councils, different schools, different community centers. And these people, these volunteers, they helped putting these tags on the butterflies' wings. And using the code on these tags, they could report when these butterflies were seen in their suburbs, And so the researchers could know, how long they took to fly from the northern regions in North America to other states. A few years later, they finally found out, that all these butterflies, they were migrating to Mexico. And this discovery was possible due to hundreds of citizen scientists working together and for their passion about biodiversity and to find out about, these fascinating species. And citizen science is a diverse field, so there are opportunities to get involved in many different ways and in many different fields for not only biodiversity, but for also linguistics, history, geography, molecular biology. And this is a very famous citizen science program as well. It's about playing video games to help researchers understand how proteins are folding. And so you will score points, as you can find out different ways these proteins can fold. And with these results, researchers can understand how proteins will fold in different environments, different conditions, and how this folding process can help to treat diseases. So it's a very fascinating program too. And another program from another field is there are many astronomy citizen science programs. This one is named Backyard World. And people have been helping researchers to find out new planets, new asteroids, new galaxies, and naming stars for years, helping from making observations from their backyards. So, in other words, in a citizen science approach, the community involvement is as important as the researcher's involvement. So when we have people participating, we can overcome logistical and geographical barriers. We can increase connectivity between different stakeholders, and also we can help, programs of local, national, and global importance. And when we talk about, from local to global, we know that mosquitoes are a major problem because of the transmission of mosquito-borne diseases, and citizen science mosquito surveillance are becoming more popular due to the concern about public health. And also there is a huge gap in the knowledge about mosquitoes, diversity, mosquitoes' behavior, and mosquitoes' distribution. So as Craig has mentioned, there are more than 3,000 species of mosquitoes in the world described, but there are much more than that, and at least 300 species in Australia. Not all of these species can pose a risk to public health, so about 10% of these species in Australia are believed to play a role in the transmission of mosquito-borne diseases. And the other species are also important for the environment. They can be pollinators, and they can be food to other invertebrates and vertebrates. And they can also be beautiful to be observed and to share their photos. But we also know that mosquito-borne diseases are increasing globally and nationally. We have seen the cases of dengue fever and Rose River virus are increasing in the past years, and also as we have been seeing on the news, Japanese encephalitis. We have been seeing some cases emerging in Australia. Back in February, we saw some cases of this virus in sentinel pigs, and a few weeks later, some people infected, and unfortunately, a few deaths. It is a very serious disease. Only 1% of people who get infected will develop serious symptoms, but when they develop, it can be fatal. So it's still the most effective way to prevent this disease is about controlling mosquito populations and avoiding mosquito bites. That's why surveillance is so important. And one example of a very successful citizen science program is the Spanish program Mosquito Alert that has been running for almost 1 decade. And in this program, people use a mobile phone application, and they use this app to take photos of mosquitoes and to share the geolocation. And so back in 2019, a new species, an invasive species, was detected for the first time in the country. This species Aedes japonicus, and it's also related to the transmission of West Nile virus in Europe, and it can be an effective carrier of Japanese encephalitis as well. And this discovery was possible due to a citizen scientist sharing their observations of mosquitoes. And yeah, there are at least 26 programs involving citizen science mosquito surveillance in the world, and 5 programs in Oceania, 4 in Australia, 1 in the Solomon Islands. And the Mosby Monitors program is the first citizen science program in the world that combines fixed point, mosquito trapping, and public report. So we have been running for almost 4 years now, and we have had over 14,000 mosquitoes collected and more than 200 people involved. And the Mosby Monitors story started earlier in 2018. So Professor Craig ran a crowdfunding campaign developed by the UniSA, and we were fortunate enough to have 158 people contributing, and we have some additional funding from the UniSA as well, and from the health department from Western Australia. So all those people who believed in the potential of the program allowed us to get mosquito traps and to ship them to different parts of South Australia in the first year, and to a few houses interstate. So, and now we have been doing that every year. So to get involved, people have to register. So we provide them with a mosquito trap. They set up the trap in their backyards. They manage the trap just once every fortnight. The mosquitoes are attracted into the trap to lay their eggs in the water inside, but they actually get trapped in a net on this translucent chamber here. So people just place the mosquitoes on this specific laminated card, which we provide as well. And they use this pattern within the circle to focus their shot, so we can have identifiable pictures of mosquitoes. So this is an example of some of the photos that we receive. So the photos received are processed, so we count the mosquitoes, we identify the species, and we make this data available either in a free-to-use online platform, and now we are also preparing a technical report so people can check how many mosquitoes and which species they had in their postcodes, and some extra information about diseases carried by these mosquitoes. So yeah, we have been running for 4 years, and as the main findings, we could see that Mosby monitors are able to collect mosquitoes of medical and ecological importance from their backyards, and the most common species collected, they are domestic species. So when we say domestic species, they use artificial water containers in people's backyards to lay their eggs and to develop their larvae. So Mosby monitors could complement the professional surveillance that we have, as the professional surveillance focuses on salt marsh species, and we can collect mosquitoes from people's backyards. And the most species collected, they're also related to the transmission of rosewood virus, Burma forest virus, and dog heartworm. So yeah, we could get data of abundance, diversity, seasonality of species. So most species were collected during summertime, during the warmer months, and through surveys and interviews, we also could see that people were able to learn from their involvement into the program, so they could learn about mosquitoes identification, mosquitoes behavior, and also they changed perceptions about they could control mosquitoes in their properties. So some people started checking for eggs and larvae in their backyards after participating in the Mosby Monitors program. So yeah, it shows that it benefits either researchers, with that information about mosquitoes, and also people who are participating. So besides the trap, we are also trying to upscale Mosby monitors to different states and upscale methods as well. So Craig has mentioned about the iNaturalist app. We also have a project, a Mosby monitors project on iNaturalist. So this is a global platform used for biodiversity monitoring. It's very interactive, so when you upload an observation on iNaturalist, it has an artificial intelligence behind the identification tools. So when you submit a photo of a magpie, for example, it's not only for mosquitoes, it's for each flora and fauna species. So if you upload a photo of a magpie, the platform will suggest it looks like a magpie and it was seen nearby. So you can agree or not with the identification, and you can learn about species ID, you can learn about the species distribution, you can learn about seasonality of this species, and there are many other tools that you can explore on iNaturalist. So on iNaturalist, we have had over 3,000 observations so far, so it's more than we have there, from 74 different species of mosquitoes. So it's very representative. As I said, we have about 300 species of mosquitoes in Australia, and 74 of them were observed on iNaturalist. So it is a very effective platform to share data of biodiversity. And we have had over 700 people involved. It's different from the trap. You don't have to have a trap to participate on this one. You can just share observations of mosquitoes at any time and from anywhere. And yeah, we have seen great pictures, and we can also learn about mosquitoes' behavior and distribution from analyzing data from iNaturalist. Like, this is one of the most common mosquitoes in Australia, and we can see the difference between male and female. The left one is the female, the right one, the smallest one with this feathery antennae, is the male mosquito from Culex quinquefasciatus. And yeah, it's one of the most common species in Australia and one of the most common species collected in the trap as well. We can also see photos of blood-fed specimens on iNaturalist, like this one. That's the most common mosquito in our backyards, Aedes notoscriptus, and it's related to the transmission of Ross River virus. And that's the male of the same species resting on a plant, so we can also learn about, behavior of the males while the females are trying to bite people. And that's a curiosity. Only the females bite because they use our blood to develop their eggs, the protein in our blood to develop their eggs. So the males don't bite, and the males feed on nectar and, from plants. And yeah, we also have seen beautiful photos of colorful mosquitoes from diverse environments. And some people would say that's the most beautiful mosquito species in Australia. And it's one of the most observed species on iNaturalist as well. This is a vegan species. It doesn't bite at all. It doesn't feed on blood. It doesn't transmit mosquito-borne diseases. It's a giant species. It is about 3 centimeters, while the other mosquitoes are about 3 millimeters or 5 millimeters. And it's one of the most observed species in Queensland and in New South Wales. And yeah, it's an effective pollinator. This is one of the most common species of mosquitoes in South Australia. It's a vector of Ross River virus, one of the main vectors of Ross River virus. And some studies have shown that it was an effective pollinator of mangrove plants in New South Wales. And as a fun fact, this species can fly up to 50 kilometers from the larval habitats to other places. So it can easily fly from a suburb to the other, or even from one city to the other. It's a salt marsh species, but yeah, it can fly to different places. And we have seen also some unusual observations on iNaturalist, like this beautiful species of Aedes captorincus is being food for this carnivorous plant, sundew, this from Drosera genus. And it was the first observation we have seen in the world of this species being trapped by this kind of plant. So we can learn a lot about mosquitoes' ecology as well through iNaturalist app. And I think that was one of the most exciting information we got from last year. So this species had never been seen in Australia before until February last year. So one citizen scientist, was just was hiking in a national park in Queensland, and they took a photo of this species and shared on iNaturalist. So quickly, people started talking on naturalists, nobody was able to identify this species. And this species had never been seen in Australia. It was only seen in Papua New Guinea before. And it was like 12 years ago, I think 20 years ago. And yeah, we just added a new species to the list of mosquitoes in Australia. So we never know when we are walking and we share an observation and we can help to make a scientific discovery by using a citizen science platform or by using a mosquito trap in our backyards. And yeah, so throughout these 4 years, we could see different outcomes from people using the traps and people using the iNaturalist platform, and also educational outcomes from people who got involved in these different trials that we have been running. And after assessing this data, we decided, why not we don't expand, Mozzie monitors to other states? And so last year, we organized for the first time a Mozzie month. So we had people participating from different states, and we ran this short-term trial. So rather than collecting data for 12 months, we now are collecting data for 6 weeks during the peak season of mosquitoes, between February and March. So yeah, the first year we had 100 people participating and more than 1,000 mosquitoes collected during 6 weeks. And this year, we just finished Mozzie month, but we are still working on the mosquito IDs. And again, amongst these 8 species, most of them were the same domestic species, Notoscriptus, quinquefaciatus, and species related to Ross River virus were the most common ones collected. And yeah, I think there's a lot of information about mosquito. I think the takeaway message from here is that when we get involved in a citizen science program, we can benefit science, but we can also have benefits from our engagement. So we can learn about mosquitoes, we can develop new skills, we can help researchers, we can help our communities, and we can also have fun when we are learning about species and when we are taking photos, getting kids involved, getting the family involved. So there are benefits for everyone. And yeah, if you are interested in participating or in joining us on Mozzie Monitors, you can join Online Naturalist today. You can create an account, you can use on the web, or you can download an app on your phone, or you can also email us to get a mosquito trap if you want to get involved on Mozzie Month 2023. And also, if you want to get involved in citizen science in general, not only on mosquitoes, but if you want to help researchers to find out about new species or monitor species, there are many different citizen science programs that everyone can get involved. So if you have a look at the Australian Citizen Science Association website, you can have a list of all the citizen science programs in Australia. The SciStarter platform is a global platform, so you can have a look at citizen science programs all over the world that we can participate from home, like from the computer, or we can go outside and help in BioBlitz activities. Or if you want to get involved in local activities, like here in South Australia, there is the Ferox Australis website. That's a not-for-profit South Australian organization that organizes citizen science activities locally. And one of the activities that they organize is the Great Southern BioBlitz, that I'll quickly show some photos. So that's a BioBlitz. A BioBlitz is like a census. So it's a way to engage people to get into nature for a short period. So we run this BioBlitz for only 4 days in October, which is the springtime for the Southern Hemisphere. So we started this project in Adelaide in 2020, and we started inviting people from different countries. As I'm from Brazil, I had some friends in Brazil and in other countries in South America, and quickly we had 12 countries participating in the first year. Speaking 3 different languages, we had meetings in Spanish, English, and Portuguese at the same time. And we got 3,000 people involved in 2020 during COVID. And so last year, we did the BioBlitz again, and we had 19 countries involved from South America, Southern Africa, Fiji, New Zealand, and Australia in Oceania. And we had more than 5,000 people involved participating in the BioBlitz and helping us to monitor biodiversity and spread environmental awareness by using the citizen science platform iNaturalist. So yeah, we had people from different countries and from different landscapes, from the bush to coastal lands to the forests in South America, for example. And yeah, these are some of the outcomes. So we could see like these tapirs from Brazil, lots of invertebrates and reptiles from Australia. They were like the most observations from here. A lot of sea creatures from New Zealand, like the sea slug. A lot of amphibians from Colombia, just a few outcomes. Huge diversity of birds from South Africa, and plenty more. Last year we had almost 200,000 observations of people participating at the same time. So that's a moment that everyone can participate. So with citizen science, we can participate throughout the whole year in different programs from different fields. So if you want to get involved, you can have a look at our website or our social media as well. So yeah, just want to finish with this quote that says, citizen science offers the power of science to everyone and the power of everyone to science. So yeah, thank you so much for listening, and yeah, thank you my supervisors.
So that's been really quite uplifting and inspiring. Thank you very much indeed. Questions? We have plenty of time for questions. Yes. Just in the front there. Jade, thanks.
Thank you. I might have missed it, but do mosquitoes actually have any benefits for mankind?
Sorry. That's a good question. We have like about 300 species, different species of mosquito just in Australia. About 35 of them can pose a risk to public health, so they can carry different viruses or parasites. They are important, so they have ecological roles. They can be food to other species, like other invertebrates or birds or fish, amphibians. And they can be also pollinators, like there was that species, that very giant mosquito, doesn't feed on blood at all, and it pollinates some species of flowers. I think it's a tricky question because I'm not aware of a species that depends strictly on mosquitoes to survive. I know there are some microbats in Queensland that they feed on mosquitoes, but as some snacks, and plants can have other pollinators as well. So I'm not aware of any species that really need mosquitoes to survive for pollination or, like for food. So yes, they are important, but I don't know how essential they might be to the environment. I don't know if Craig might know a species that really needs mosquitoes to feed on mosquitoes to survive. But yeah, they have their ecological roles, to other species.
Yes, by all means.
Thank you. From a paleontological point of view, do you know how long mosquitoes have been on Earth?
Oh. Great question. I think I need a couple of seconds. I think insects started diversifying for 6 million years ago. Which was
like 65 through 120
million, 65, yeah, that was a hard question. Yeah, so between 65 to 120 million years ago. Thanks, Greg.
Any other questions? One here. Thank you, Jade.
I have two. I hope that's okay. One question on behalf of my husband. Why can we be sitting on the deck and he gets bitten and gets driven inside and I'm absolutely fine?
That's a really good question. Until a couple of years ago, people, researchers would believe, that blood type or even the food that we intake, they would have a role, in the way mosquitoes are attracted to some people more than others. But about 4 years ago, some researchers from Queensland, they found out that mosquitoes are actually attracted by the microbiota that we have in our skin. So the diversity of bacteria that we have in our skin can attract mosquitoes. So some people attract more than others. They still don't know how these bacteria can change, this flora of bacteria can change. As far as we know, the food doesn't have any role on that. So if we have alcohol or eat Vegemite, it doesn't change, like the way mosquitoes are attracted to people.
Secondly, do you mind if I do a pitch on a citizen science project that's happening locally now? Unley Council. Does anyone live in the Unley Council area? Beautiful. So we are commencing a partnership with UniSA to do a citizen science project where we are asking residents over the age of 50 to do an audit of the age friendliness of the green spaces that you use on a day-to-day basis. And then we're going to use that information to apply it to criteria in design of future parks and playgrounds in the Unley Council area, and in particular, select a case study park.
We were involved in the pilot of that.
Were you? Excellent. Well, you'd be more than welcome to get involved in the second phase. So I would love to collect some names today of people in the Unley Council area who would like to participate. Be most welcome.
Great.
Thank you.
Who could have asked for a better immediate application of today's presentations? Thank you for that initiative. There's a question behind, I think, Jade as well. In fact, there are two.
I just had two comments. You asked about what depends on mosquitoes. I think malaria parasites depend on them, and the bad press that malaria gets isn't completely deserved, I think. They give some immunity from some other bad stuff. Is that right?
Yes. Sorry, can you repeat the question because I just heard the first part?
Sorry.
Question.
Malaria parasites depend on mosquitoes, but malaria is not all bad. I thought I read somewhere where they give some immunity from other bad stuff. Is that right?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if I know how to answer these questions. Yes, malaria parasites depend on mosquitoes. They're not endemic in Australia as well. So they use other animals as a reservoir. So mosquitoes have, to bite these animals and so bite humans. So they transmit parasites from animals to humans. I'm sure there's some research in Africa where, like people who are born with a kind of anemia, they have some benefits from, like not contracting, false form, yes, to not contracting.
I remember now, you're right, sickle cell,
Yeah, so to not contracting malaria.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about any research that people who have malaria can benefit to contract other diseases. So I don't know how to answer this question.
No, I was thinking of sickle cell.
I definitely have a look at this. Yeah, thank you.
And my other question was, I heard that if you take fish oil tablets for several weeks before you go to an infested region with lots of mosquitoes, it kind of puts them off. Is that right?
Yeah, people would believe that until, like again, 4 years ago, before this research from Queensland, as well as taking vitamin B and garlic. So people would believe they would be able, to repel mosquitoes because of the smell, like from their sweat. But it was proved that it was not effective. The difference was not significant. So what was able, to change how mosquitoes are attracted to people was actually the bacteria that people had on their skins. Yeah.
There's a question, I think, behind as well. Jade, just immediately behind, thanks.
As a biologist and an active citizen scientist, I agree with everything that's been said today. And I know I'm at an active ageing event, but the thing that worries me at the moment, more than mental health of us older people, is young people. And I wonder how much activity is happening at the adolescent age in schools, particularly the effect of COVID on mental health of that group of people. Unfortunately, the curriculum of our schools doesn't get people out very often. Are there any moves to actually involve young people in citizen science at a big level? I mean, I know in some schools it does happen because you've got enthusiastic teachers, but I think it's something, because if the kids have poor mental health at 17 or 18, what are they going to be like when they're our age?
That's a very good question. We have the Australian Citizen Science Association here in Australia, and they're always, partnering with teachers and organizing these working groups throughout the year. So we have meetings every month, or every second month, to discuss how we can implement citizen science in schools and how we can have, kids and, teenagers more involved in collecting data from different fields, not only on biodiversity monitoring, but, from different fields of citizen science. In Queensland, we have 2 projects that run on schools and involve mosquito monitoring. The AER Toolkit, it's for primary school teachers and students, and another program that I can't remember the name right now, that's for secondary school students, that they collect information, they collect eggs of possibly Aedes aegypti that can transmit dengue fever in Queensland. And they also use PCR techniques on their schools. They learn how to run the PCR to identify the species that they are collecting. So it merges on the STEM framework. So there are some initiatives in Australia, and it's growing, but we know that it is still not enough. We still have to grow more, and the Australian Citizen Science Association is doing an amazing job by having teachers, on these working groups and discussing how we can actually do that, because some teachers say they want to have kids involved in citizen science, but they don't have the confidence, or they don't think, they can merge the citizen science into the school curriculum, which is quite tight, so they think they don't have, enough time to merge the citizen science skills. So it's still a challenge, but I think we are moving, to make it more present in the schools.
If I may, I might just add to that. There's this, people may have heard of the concept of nature play and this idea of getting more and more kids kind of into that nature. And that's still something that is in its infancy with regards to policy and curriculum. So we have another student who just finished a few months before Larissa from the same part of the uni, and she did a whole thesis on nature play in schools and curriculum. And there's a long way to go. That's tough nut to crack. Trying to get it into the Australian curriculum, trying to find space in the curriculum, and then even defining what does that even mean, nature play? Is it kids in the school day going out, or is it more that kind of holistic part of their lives you're setting them up for getting out? So yeah, that's citizen science kind of plays into that, but that's a big tough nut to crack. And I think you're right. That focus on young people. That's I see my nieces and nephews and all cooped up and post-COVID, and yeah, it's a worry. Yeah, big worry.
Any other questions? There was one right at the back over there.
Hello, thank you. My sister used to live in Queensland, and she's got the Ross River virus, and she lives down here now. Can the mosquitoes in my garden pick up the virus from her and transfer it to any members of my family or other people?
Not anymore, because if she had the Ross River virus a few years ago, so she's not infectious at this moment. But if any person, is infected with rotavirus and the mosquito bites this person who is infected at the moment and bites another one, they can infect other people. And actually, rotavirus is endemic, and it usually spreads on kangaroos and wallabies. So mosquitoes, first bite, these animals, and so they bite humans, so they can infect us.
But I thought when you got the Ross River virus, you got it forever.
But not, like the amount of virus that you have in your blood is not enough to keep you infectious forever. So you have the disease, so you have the virus, but you are not infectious.
Yeah, the virus won't be circulating after probably 7 to 14 days after the initial infection. There won't be detectable virus, but they could have antibodies to the virus, which will stay with them, but that won't. There's no on-forward risk. The actual virus only spends a short amount of time in humans, but they might be left with some of the symptomology, perhaps, with sore joints and so forth. But yeah, the actual virus kind of comes and goes and can leave you with arthritis and fatigue sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, that was a worry.
Oh, that's great. Jay, just right at the back, so there's a question as well.
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting and inspiring talk. I just downloaded my iNaturalist app on my phone.
That's great.
We'll see where that goes. I was going to ask you though, with lots of lay people being involved in observation, that sort of thing, how do you maintain the quality of the research project and make sure that you're getting good data?
That's great, because to get involved in citizen science, you don't have to be an expert, so you don't have to know everything about a specific topic to help in research. So you can learn on the way, while you are collecting data, you can learn about species identification. You can have some feedback, from researchers, so you can learn about how you can provide better quality photos for identification. With the Mosey monitors, we could see, in the first year, we run the program for 12 months, and the photos improved so much from the first month to the final month in the first year of engagement. So people can learn while they are doing, while they are actively participating in the program. So they don't have to know everything before starting, but they can learn once they get started. And I know I showed only some amazing photos from iNaturalist, but we don't have to have professional skills or a professional camera, or we don't have to take the best photo to share on iNaturalist. So photographs can be identifiable even, when we are using our phones, we can take identifiable photos. With mosquitoes, we can just slap mosquitoes and take photos of the dead specimen. If we have, from different angles, we are still able to identify. So they don't have to be perfect, they don't have to be professional, and they are still valuable to science. And with iNaturalist, it's an open data platform, so researchers can get this data at any moment. So throughout the year, they can get the data from different species that they are, researching. So every observation is valuable.
Any other questions? No, well, it's been a really inspiring and fascinating session, and I'm so impressed with what these two researchers are doing about making citizen science so not only available but so successful. You may well want to listen to these presentations again, or you may want to share them with friends or family. Remember, there is a website address, and I think it might come on at the very end, Zoe, on the slide. I think it probably will do. We'll just wait a moment and see. But I would like you to join me in thanking Craig and Larissa for a really wonderful presentation. Have champagne in it, I think. Now, Larissa. The other one's a more modest one, no, not at all. I'm not sure to what extent they're keeping mosquitoes away, but we wouldn't stop us drinking.
I think we should do that experiment.
We actually have one more little
gift here because we learnt that it was somebody's birthday earlier this week.
Oh.
So we have a very small little token for you, Ruth. Happy birthday and thank you.
That's very kind, and indeed, I'm at the age where the birthdays seem to come around awfully rapidly, and I try to forget about them, but nonetheless, thank you so much, Zoe, that's lovely. Just before you go, to let you know, the next Successful Ageing Seminar is on the 27th of July. The topic is legal issues that become more applicable as we age. And there's a bit of cyber security and all of that. Emeritus Professor Rick Saar will be speaking. Some of you will know of his work. And that should be a terrific session. Thanks for coming. Have a safe trip back home.